Hey there, welcome to SI Now. It's Friday, November 11th, and I'm Maggie Gray. What a life. Former basketball star Kenny Anderson went from New York City high school legend to Final Four with Georgia Tech to becoming the second overall pick in the draft by the New Jersey Nets to being an all-star and earning over $60 million. But that's just the shiny stuff. Along the way, Anderson fathered 7 children by 4 women, lost all of his money, was arrested for a DUI, visited North Korea with Dennis Rodman, and eventually admitted he had been sexually abused as a child. Anderson's life is the subject of a new documentary called Mr. Chibbs, and he joined me earlier today. Kenny, you're the subject of a new documentary. It's called Mr. Chibbs. This is a nod to a nickname that your late mother gave to you as a child. This is a really emotional and raw film. We see you break down in tears multiple times over the course of an hour and a half. What was the hardest part about watching it back?
It's therapy somewhat for me, just to see all the things I had to go through, in my life, and especially now to see, after playing 14 years in the NBA and then retiring, what's next? You know what I mean? We all a work in progress. That's what I like about the documentary, but I'm still trying to figure it out. It's not no ending to it. I'm just trying to, raise my kids the right way, be functional. I'm going through therapy once a week, and just to have a productive life.
Have you found that people are starting to be perhaps a little more sympathetic to your story after you made the admission about being sexually abused at a young age?
I don't want to take offended. I don't know and I don't care.
Okay.
It's something for me to better myself. If I better myself, then I can go on and help others. I'm just be a voice, an advocate, of child molestation and being abused. There's all type of form of abuse. There's verbal, there's physical. I've been abused every which way, throughout my life. So I'm able now. It's like therapy now. Maybe about 3 years ago, I couldn't talk like this about it because I was embarrassed and ashamed. But my wife told, if you're going to do this documentary, you don't lie, tell the truth. So I waited. I wasn't going to do it. I was like, and I said, you know what? I got to get help.
Did you find that you said you've been abused on every different level across a spectrum? Did you find that you were then doing that to others, that you were repeating that behavior on the ones that you loved?
Absolutely. Girlfriends and womanizing and verbally abusing them, and never physical, but verbally abusing women and taking advantage of who I am to manipulate people. And I've had some real dark days, that I can't get back. That I feel ashamed. Just being honest with myself. And I think my mother, she's rolling around in her grave. She's gonna be watching the doc. But she said about 4 months before she passed that she wanted me to get my life together. She saw I was going down the wrong path. So it sticks with me.
What do you think she would think about what you're doing now and being honest and trying to change your course?
She would be happy that I'm paying it forward, giving it back, to someone. It's not about money with me. It's just about freeing me, you know what I mean? And doing the right thing for me so my family, could live a productive life, so I can be a better husband, so I could be a better friend.
Do you wish that this awakening had come sooner so that she could have seen this transformation?
No, I think it had to come when it came. You know what I mean? I try to, everything happens for a reason. And God is not finished with me. I've been blessed with child prodigy. Everything came to me easy at 10, 11, 12 years old. Then, went crazy for a minute. Then he came back. The angels, they helping me right now. He's looking down on me, and he's not finished with me. I don't know, but I'm trying to figure this thing out. But I know where my heart is at. My passion is about this generation and the youth that's coming up. They need me. They need to see, if you're not, don't take for granted your talent. don't run, don't go down certain paths. You know, I went down. I didn't do nothing really crazy, but you know, alcohol, and you got to control that. You can't let that get out of hand. If anything you're addicted to, and it causes your life to go astray and chaos, it's no good. You got to stop it.
You mentioned before about alcohol, and you know, we see you blowing into a breathalyzer that's in your car. That your car won't start without it. But we also see you drinking in the documentary. Can you quit?
I quit. You know, I'm not quitting sociably. I'm not gonna lie, but I carry myself a lot better. You know, I don't drink as much. But we did that to show you. You know, and if you see the end of the doc, it all comes together. You know, I didn't want to hide it. You know, from the DUI, from the drinking, it caused me problems. You know, and then at the end, you know, boom, this is where I'm at, my family, and I'm trying to get it together, trying to get it right.
You talked about being in therapy, facing a lot of these demons, trying to change your life. What role does basketball have in this sort of transformation for you?
It's a big role because you can reach kids through basketball and sports. And then once you reach them in basketball, then you try to mentor them, see about their lives, how you feeling, what's going on in your home. You know, I think very important, these kids now don't have a lot of the ones that don't do well. You got to grow up with structure. So it's very important. I had structure in my life, and I think that's what helped me a little bit.
Congratulations on this documentary, Mr. Chibbs. It was an emotional roller coaster to watch, enlightening about your life, and we wish you all the best moving forward, Kenny. Thank you.
Oh, thanks for having me.
You.
All right, it's time to get you ready for Week 10 in the NFL. Ryan Asselta alongside Super Bowl champ Chris Canty. We're going to get to our 4 downs in just a second. But Chris, it's the first time we've been together since the presidential election. And a question I've been waiting to get at you and get your take on is what it's like as a player being in the locker room during an election. You were on different teams during different times and different elections. What's that like going into that locker room day after a presidential result? And you know there's teammates that have very opposing views within the same locker room there.
It's a tough situation because you know you've got teammates on both sides of the aisle. So when you have a presidential election that's so polarizing, it makes it difficult because you understand that guys might not see things the way that you see things from a political perspective. I can remember in 2008, we were going through that election process with now President Barack Obama. And just when he was elected president, you know, a lot of the guys in the locker room were excited. We were playing a song by Young Jeezy, the rapper, "My President is Black." And, you know, you had some guys that didn't necessarily feel the same way that we did about the election, you know, because the outcome was something other than what they wanted. And so they would come up, you know, we had guys come up to us and say, "Congratulations on your president." And we're sitting there saying, wait a second. It's our president now. And I think it's important when you're going through something like that, something as divisive as a presidential election, that you deal with the issue, you talk about the elephant in the room, because ultimately you've got to be able to put that aside, come together, and try to accomplish the common goal, which is winning and ultimately trying to chase a championship.
That was when you were with the Cowboys. Were you able to quickly move on, suit up, and then line up next to some of those guys?
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's one of those situations where we had to do our best to put it behind us, and we did. We didn't make the playoffs that season, but we were still a winning football team. We were 9-7 that year. I think our locker room did a pretty good job of managing that.
Yeah, I think a lot of locker rooms and players are going through that this week for their respective teams. All right, let's get to 4 downs with Chris Canty, and we begin with the big green mess in New York. Jets coach Todd Bowles benched Muhammad Wilkerson and Sheldon Richardson for the start of last week's game. Reports are the players missed some team meetings. They were late. Even Wilkerson missed a team meeting where they were giving him a birthday cake, Chris. What do you think? Bowles now in his 2nd year as Jets head coach. Has he already lost this locker room?
Well, when you look at the leaders and the way that they're behaving, it certainly feels like it, but I can't lay all of this at the foot of Todd Bowles. Those guys in the locker room have got to accept some level of accountability, responsibility for what's taking place with that New York Jets football team. When you've got Sheldon Richardson and Muhammad Wilkerson, 2 of your best players, especially on the defensive side of the ball, a group that's underachieving, when they're missing meetings, that's a problem. And then I feel like there's a situation where the young guys can't necessarily hold those guys accountable because those guys have been empowered not by the head coach, not by the general manager, but by the ownership. And, they have conflicting interests. Muhammad Wilkerson just got paid, so he has the financial security. So there's not a lot of incentive for him to necessarily do the right things this season. Sheldon Richardson was just on the trade block, so he's looking at it from a perspective of not being around long with this New York Jets team, so he's not really invested. So it's a situation where you need to allow Todd Bowles to send a message to his locker room, and I think it has to be more than just a one-quarter suspension for players that violate team rules and miss meetings.
All right, let's get to second down. The commish stands behind the officials. Yesterday, Roger Goodell said that he doesn't think officiating in the NFL is a big problem right now and that he doesn't necessarily think full-time referees are needed here. Now, Chris, players and coaches have had a lot to say about missed calls this year, refs not getting the job done. Is the commish wrong here? Could making these guys full-time actually help some of their production on the field?
Well, if Roger Goodell doesn't think there's any issue with the officiating, he might be the only one. Everybody from the coaches to the fans, members of the clubs has found issues with the way that games were refereed and being officiated during the course of the regular season. I understand there's a human element. Roger Goodell made the statement that if he felt like changing things to make officials full-time would get rid of the error in terms of the human element, he would do it. And we all recognize that the human element is going to be there. There's going to be a margin for error. But I think it's a responsibility for the NFL in terms of integrity of the game to try to get the calls right and to do everything that's humanly possible to do that. And I think having full-time officials, full-time referees does that, because what you do is you give those guys an opportunity to improve their craft because they have more time to work on it. They're around it more. Anytime you get more repetitions at something, you're going to be better at it. So I think the onus is on the league office to do the right thing here and get full-time officials.
All right, third down. Many players and coaches have spoken out after the presidential election. Well, this week, Roger Goodell said that Donald Trump's inflammatory remarks about women over the last few months is going to make it hard for him to do his job curbing domestic violence in the NFL. What do you think, Chris? Does the commissioner have a point here?
It's tough because when you have somebody in a leadership position like President-elect Donald Trump that's making derogatory comments toward women, misogynistic language that he's utilizing, and then bragging about groping women in the Billy Bush tape, I think it makes it tough, because you're trying to change the culture surrounding domestic violence in your league with your members and your players, but you're also trying to change the perception of domestic violence, bring awareness to domestic violence in society, and certainly do your part in terms of prevention of domestic violence moving forward. I think it makes it tougher on everybody. And when you see Goodell and the NFL try to take steps in order to do that, I think it's tough to point at that when you have somebody in a leadership position that's not necessarily taking the same viewpoint. So again, this of all the things that we criticize Roger Goodell on, I think this is one of those situations that he actually got right. I applaud him for making the comments that he did and taking on President-elect Donald Trump in terms of criticizing him about his comments and his attitudes toward women. And hopefully we see that change now that he's in the White House.
You almost wish he would take it a step further and really say to these guys, listen, that language, that behavior, it's unacceptable in the NFL. We're not going to stand for it.
It's unacceptable anywhere, and I think that's the thing that Roger Goodell, that's the message that he's trying to get across when he's communicating, and he did that interview, and he made those comments about President-elect Donald Trump.
All right, fourth down, the must-watch game of the weekend, Cowboys versus Steelers. Dallas has won 7 in a row. Pittsburgh, 4-4, trying to keep pace with the Ravens, who won last night on Thursday Night Football. Chris, when you look at these two teams, Big Ben is back for Pittsburgh. Dak still getting the start. Who's got the edge in this game?
Well, I've got to go with the Dallas Cowboys simply because of their offensive line. They've been dominant, the best offensive line in pro football. The Pittsburgh Steelers defense hasn't really played that well this season. They're kind of middle of the pack in the 20s in total defense. So it's not necessarily a dominant group. And when you look at the formula that the Dallas Cowboys have been utilizing, a lot of Ezekiel Elliott behind that offensive line, that group providing protection and time for Dak Prescott to go through his progression and find open receivers, I think it's going to make life really tough on that Pittsburgh Steelers defense. And they're going to try to play keep away from the Pittsburgh Steelers offense, because you got to think that they're going to be better than they were a week ago in Baltimore. Big Ben now another week removed from that knee surgery. He didn't quite look like himself against Baltimore, so you expect him to be ready to go in this one. It's certainly an embarrassing loss in Baltimore for the Steelers. They'll be ready to go, but I think the Dallas Cowboys offense plays keep away, and they dominate that football game.
Pretty interesting, too. Looks like Tony Romo is going to be a healthy scratch in this game, so it's clear the decision's been made.
Even though Tony Romo is healthy, I think he's going to be seeing a lot of the bench these days. Dak Prescott has really got that thing rolling.
Hey, we got a surprise here. We here may have been a birthday. Yesterday?
I celebrated my 34th birthday
34th
yesterday.
birthday. Well, we here at SI Now have a little treat. We do have a cake for you, Chris.
Well, I won't miss the meeting.
Yeah.
I won't
There
miss
we
the
go.
meeting.
I mean, on cue. A little happy birthday, Chris.
Hey, I like
happy
it.
birthday, man.
Was that red velvet?
It looks
That's
like it
my
could
favorite.
be red
That's
velvet.
my favorite
yeah.
too, by the way.
Hey, you have a favorite birthday memory, either growing up as a kid or maybe in the NFL that was just you had a big win on your birthday or something like that?
Yeah, I was down in Baltimore a couple of years ago and actually played on my birthday, and we had an overtime win against the Cincinnati Bengals, and I was like, thank God, because I had a birthday party right after the game, and it makes it tough to celebrate your birthday when you have an overtime loss. So I was glad that we had that overtime win against the Cincinnati Bengals. We were able to eat my birthday cake and be excited and celebrate because we also had a win.
Well, we're going to eat this cake. You don't want to miss that meeting.
No, I'm not going to miss the meeting.
Can't pull a
Exactly.
Wilkerson.
No, I
Your
won't do
cake
that.
is waiting for you. Happy birthday, man.
Thanks, my man. Appreciate it.
All right, so that's getting you ready for Week 10 in the NFL. But how about fantasy football? It's getting down to crunch time for teams around the league. Here's some help from SI's fantasy expert Michael Beller with his Start 'em and Sit 'em.
Final third of the typical fantasy season is upon us with the dawning of Week 10. Buys are nearly in the past, but 4 teams take a seat this week. It's time to make the borderline calls that could make or break your team in Week 10. Start Dak Prescott. The rookie is 9th among quarterbacks in total points and 7th in points per game. He has at least 17.5 points in all but one game, and that was his NFL debut. It's time for everyone to acknowledge that the Mississippi State product is locked in as a QB1. The over-under on Cowboys Steelers is a robust 49.5 points, suggesting a high-scoring affair. You want to get invested in this game, and Prescott is a great way to do so. Sit Kirk Cousins. Washington hosts Minnesota and its stifling defense, which has allowed just 6.11 yards per attempt this season. Efficiency is the driver of fantasy scoring for a quarterback, and it's incredibly tough to be efficient against the Vikings. Cousins is one of those quarterbacks who rides the QB 1-2 border every week, and a matchup with the Vikings pushes him safely into QB2 territory. At running back, keep Tim Hightower in your lineups. The Saints aren't going to abandon their committee anytime soon, especially after the success both Hightower and Mark Ingram had last week. To be fair, the 49ers defense is historically bad against the run, but Hightower once again has a nice matchup this week. The Broncos may be great against the pass, but they've allowed the 7th most points per game to running backs this year. Peyton Barber is in line for the start against the Bears, although Doug Martin did return to practice this week. Even if Barber starts for the Buccaneers, he shouldn't do the same for his fantasy owners. The Bears have been quietly tough on runners, allowing just 3.74 yards per carry and the 4th fewest points to the position. Barber will need to volume his way to an RB2 day, and there's no guarantee the touches will be there for him. Stephon Diggs has entered 4 games this season with a clean bill of health. He has a total of 37 catches for 441 yards and 2 touchdowns in those games. In the 3 games he has played after appearing on the injury report, he has just 11 catches for 105 yards. Guess who's completely healthy heading into this week's matchup with Washington? Fire up Diggs as a sure thing wide receiver 2 with a wide receiver 1 ceiling. Sit Willie Snead. Drew Brees is a magician at home, but he'll have his work cut out for him with the Broncos visiting the Superdome this week. Even if Brees is up to that challenge, all 3 Saints receivers are not going to make a meaningful fantasy impact. Snead is most likely to be the odd man out. He's clearly 3rd in the pecking order and is the least equipped to do battle with the Broncos' physical secondary. In 5 games as the primary tight end in Houston, C.J. Fedorowicz has 24 catches for 272 yards and 3 touchdowns. That's good for 9.04 points per game in standard scoring leagues, which ranks 4th at the position behind Greg Olsen, Rob Gronkowski, and Jordan Reed. Fedorowicz is locked in as a legitimate tight end 1. The only sure things in the New England offense are Tom Brady and Rob Gronkowski, and that makes it hard to trust Martellus Bennett. Since his 67-yard, 3-touchdown performance in Brady's 2016 debut, he has 10 receptions for 88 yards in 3 games. The back end of the tight end 1 pool has deepened the last few weeks, pushing Bennett safely into the tight end 2 class for the foreseeable future. Owners looking for a defense to stream should shift their gaze to the Houston Texans. Few quarterbacks have been as generous as Blake Bortles, who has 10 interceptions and 2 fumbles this year. Even without J.J. Watt, the Texans should be able to get after Bortles this week. Jacksonville has been the worst rushing team in the league this side of the New York Giants, which will likely force the action onto Bortles' right arm. The Texans will exploit that deficiency. That'll do it for the Week 10 edition of Start 'em or Sit 'em. I'll see you all next week for waiver wire advice. Until then, this is Michael Beller wishing you good luck this weekend.
Thank you, Michael Beller. Well, if you're wondering what to watch this weekend, we have you covered from coast to coast. This is SI Now's Weekend Drive presented by Toyota. Let's go places. This week we start in Oklahoma with a Big 12 matchup between the Baylor Bears and Oklahoma Sooners. Bob Stoops is looking for his 14th straight Big 12 win this Saturday. He knows it won't be easy, trying to stop Baylor's rushing attack, which leads the conference and is 6th in the nation.
Well, go back and read. They've led the league last year and the year before as well. No, that's their bread and butter, is to be able to run the football. And they've led the league in rushing probably the last 4 or 5 years. So I know for the last couple I would for sure.
Oklahoma has only lost 3 times to Baylor going back to the 1970s, but 3 of those losses have come in the last 5 years. Now we check out some NFL action where the Patriots host the Seahawks in a rematch of Super Bowl 49. Tom Brady's well aware of how talented the Seahawks defense is, allowing under 17 points per game.
You know, they're going to run every defense in the book. I mean, I think it's a relatively aggressive plan that they have. You know, I think they all know what they're responsible for, and they all do a great job defending it. It's a very sound defense. They don't give up anything, and that's why you can play that style. There's no voids in zones. There's no voids in the running game. It's hard to throw the ball on these guys. I think they all play very aggressively. And, you know, Coach says, you know, if you love football, you know, Sunday night at 8:30 here at this stadium is going to be a great place for it.
We'll see if Malcolm Butler can come up with another goal line interception. Lastly, we head to the world's most famous arena, Madison Square Garden, for UFC 205. This is the first time MSG will host an MMA event since it was recently legalized in New York. The most anticipated match is for the lightweight title between Conor McGregor and current champion Eddie Alvarez, and things got a little heated during Thursday's press conference.
I wonder how much a chair would have cost me.
The tension between these two fighters has UFC fans amped, and Conor McGregor looks to be the first fighter to hold belts in 2 different weight classes. And that's what's in store for this weekend. Should have thrown that chair, maybe. I don't know. Well, today is Veterans Day. It's a time to honor all of those who served in our armed forces. Yesterday, our own Ryan Aselto was joined by Sergeant Sean Castle from Tuscaloosa, Alabama. It's courtesy of Toyota. Let's go places.
All right, Sergeant, you've become a beacon of hope for people with disabilities who still want to maintain a very active lifestyle. You play a lot of wheelchair basketball. What or who inspired you to give that sport a try?
Well, actually, what happened is right after my injury, I was introduced to an organization known as the Lakeshore Foundation in Birmingham, Alabama. Right after my injuries, I rolled in there. I met a wonderful young lady by the name of Susan Robinson. And when I rolled into their facility, they have Olympic and Paralympic banners on the ceiling. Immediately, I fell in love, and that became my passion. That became my dream. I've worked very, very hard, and hopefully come January, I'll have the opportunity to at least get in the next rotation heading for Tokyo.
So impressive. Talk us about after you suffered your accident and ultimately changed your life. How hard was it to pick yourself up and make that decision to move forward and now get to this point in becoming a Paralympic athlete?
You know, I was like everybody else that suffers a catastrophic injury. There's a time period where I went, what am I going to do now? What is next in my life? And it took me a while to find out what else was going to happen, because you have to understand, I had my entire career ripped away from me like that. It's absolutely that moment of what's next in my life and then finding that. And that is so critical for everybody who exits the military, not just injured military.
You mentioned some of the veterans you've come in contact with. What advice would you give to other veterans or regular citizens with disabilities that may be in the same boat, may be looking to figure out what do I do next? And to kind of help them maybe get involved in athletics, whether it's basketball or a different type of sport.
Remember, you're still here. That is the number one advice I will give. We are still here. If you're a veteran especially, you came home. There are so many other men and women in this world who had to pay the ultimate sacrifice for our freedom. Their families would love more than anything to have them home in a wheelchair, missing limbs, whatever the case is. They would love to have them here, but they don't. But you came home, so you still have an opportunity in your life to make everything that you ever dreamed come true. So it is our obligation, it is our duty to the men and women who did make the ultimate sacrifice to push forward with life. It's such an amazing thing that, my God, we get to wake up every day and we get to choose. I'm going to find what it is that I love. I'm going to keep pushing forward, and I'm going to prove that just because I'm injured doesn't mean that my life is over.
Such great motivation, Sergeant. You're working on a terrific partnership between Hiring Our Heroes and our friends over at Toyota. Tell us a little bit about some of the work being done to help veterans with transitioning back into the workforce right now.
Toyota partnered with Hiring Our Heroes and Sergeant Dakota Myers, who is a wonderful man who I met over the summer. He's a Medal of Honor recipient. And they partnered with, resumeengine.org to try and make sure that these military members who are leaving have the tools they need to push forward. One of the hardest things that people don't understand is we actually have a higher, significantly higher, almost double unemployment rate for military who come out versus civilians at the same age range. So Hiring Our Heroes and resumeengine.org have done a wonderful job, trying to give veterans the tools they need to move forward in life after they transition out. Toyota has stepped up in a big way, not just financially, but support across the board for this organization, and that is wholeheartedly deserved. I can't say enough about the work that they're doing.
Absolutely. A terrific partnership and such an inspirational message from you, Sergeant Sean Castle. Thanks for being with us. Good luck to you, and good luck to your Alabama Crimson Tide. I know you got your shirt on there for us.
Roll Tide. Thank you very much for having me.
Had to get the Roll Tide in. I like that. What a story. What an inspiration on Veterans Day. And I like those basketball moves, too. They were pretty good. As we say goodbye for this week, we'll take a final look ahead to UFC 205 with legendary ring announcer Bruce Buffer. Now, we asked Bruce to imagine what it would be like if other famous athletes were to enter the octagon. Take a look. We're hoping that you wouldn't mind indulging us a little bit.
Sure.
We'd love to know if certain other famous athletes were getting into the octagon, perhaps what you would say to introduce them. So we have a couple. I was asking you before the show who you are a fan of, so maybe I'll give you a couple of those also. You don't have to do it in the big Bruce Buffer voice. If you don't want to, you can do the rehearsal voice. But just sort of off the top of your head, what would you say? So we'll have you look to camera 9, if you will.
Okay, camera 9, here we are.
Say LeBron James decided to get into UFC. What do you think perhaps a couple words about his entrance would be?
Presenting the historic, legendary NBA champion, and now making his debut in the octagon, standing 6 feet 8 inches tall, weighing in at 249 pounds, fighting out of Akron, Ohio, USA, presenting LeBron King James.
Unbelievable. I'm blown away. Actually, just being close to that big of a voice is really powerful. This was a new one that we just saw. The entire Chicago Cubs winning the World Series, breaking a drought that lasted 108 years. I know you said you are a Phillies fan, so this might be a little tough.
No, listen, I love the Cubs. They won. I was so happy for that. It was cool.
Do you have perhaps if the entire Cubs were getting into the octagon, maybe a word or two?
And now, a championship team of fighters. 108 years since proving the champions they can be and the champions they are today, presenting the Chicago Cubs.
The entire city of Chicago just was floored by that because this is going to be the bow on the top of their present of 2016. The final one for you, and we're going to let you go.
No, it's okay, sure.
How about Michael Jordan?
Michael Jordan, wow, the greatest. Presenting, back from multitudes of years of championships, escapades in basketball, tryouts in baseball, and now entering the world of fighting, standing 6 feet 6 inches tall, weighing in at 216 pounds, from the School of North Carolina, presenting Air Jordan, Michael Jordan.
I'm just in, I have to applause. It really was great. Thank
blushing.
you
Thank
so
you. That's
much
cool.
for that. Bruce, congratulations on all your success and the best of luck to you at UFC 205. We know this is the crown jewel now of the UFC card
Yeah,
and
it is.
events, and we're looking forward to it.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Really
Thank
appreciate
you very,
it.
very much.
Gotta love that Bruce really got into it there. It was very powerful standing next to him. More of my interview with Bruce Buffer is on SI.com, so go take a look at that. And it's going to do it for this Friday edition of SI Now. We'll see you back here on Monday at 1 p.m. Eastern, of course. But until then, stick with SI.com. And don't forget to follow us on Twitter at SI Now Live. Enjoy your weekend, and we'll see you back here on Monday.